let's get started. And welcome to today's webinar, Your Caregiving Questions Answered. I'm your host, Christian Knoll. The responsibilities of caregiving, whether for a parent, spouse, sibling, or other loved one, can feel overwhelming. You may be juggling those difficult decisions and tasks with a full-time job, young children, plus other pressures of day-to-day life. Amy Goyer, a writer and caregiving expert, knows these challenges firsthand, and she joins us today for a conversation about her personal journey and the best practical, actionable tips that she's picked up along the way. All right, let's jump in and meet our speaker, Amy Goyer. Amy is a writer, speaker, and consultant specializing in caregiving and family issues. She has been an advocate for older adults, children, and families for nearly 40 years. She's a frequent guest on the Today Show and is an often quoted media authority with interviews and appearances across national networks, the New York Times, Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, People Magazine, Dr. Phil, The Doctors, and numerous other national and state media outlets. Amy is the author of Juggling Life, Work, and Caregiving, a companion book to the PBS documentary Caring for Mom and Dad. This book is a resource for anyone who faces the challenges of caring for an adult friend or relative. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much. Can y'all see me? I don't know. There we go. Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm just going to zoom in my screen here a little bit so you can see my parents there in the back. I'm going to be talking about them. And I have kind of brought some photos and things to share with all of you to give you a feel for what my caregiving experience was like. So I'm going to share my screen at this time and show you some slides as we go along. Well, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, Christian, for introducing me. Thank you, Brookdale Senior Living, for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. I'm really excited to share with you some of the things that I learned as a caregiver. Now, I wanted to first tell you a little bit about my caregiving story. Everyone's caregiving story is unique. So I just want to put that right out there, that you're going to find some things in my story that are kind of similar to yours, some things you'll identify with, and then you'll have things that are very different than my story, because every caregiving situation is unique. I've been a caregiver my entire adult life, starting with my grandparents. This is my grandmother, Clara. She lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was born in Indiana, but grew up in Ohio. My parents moved from Ohio to Arizona when I was a sophomore in college and at Ohio University. At that point, I started going over to Indiana and helping out. My cousins and my aunt and uncle would do most of the support for my grandmother, but I was the respite person. I would come on the weekend and take her grocery shopping and take her to church. She never drove. Spend time with her, maybe help her with a few things around the house. My dad was an only child, and my grandparents, my granddaddy CV and my grandmother Genevieve, who you can see here, lived in South Bend, Indiana. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. Granddaddy was 10 years older than she, and he was her primary caregiver for many years, with dad supplementing and us. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and we would help out as we could. But as the years went on and my parents moved across the country, my grandmother was my grandfather was struggling. So I would go over pretty frequently and arranged for them, first of all, to get Meals on Wheels. And then I helped my grandfather understand how to deal with incontinence, because my grandmother had become incontinent and he was putting trash bags down on the bed at night. He didn't know about incontinence supplies. And so I helped him with all of that. I would make sure that when we eventually hired home health aides to help them at home, and I would go periodically and monitor and make sure they were doing what they should be doing, and also just bring joy to my grandparents as much as I could. In the meantime, my mom had a stroke. She was only 62 when she had her stroke, which incidentally is how old I am right now. And that is really a strange feeling, to think that my mom at 62, she had aphasia after her stroke and she had chronic pain. She was never able to drive again. She struggled with cooking because of the sequential aspects of it. And my dad became her primary caregiver, while also long distance caregiving for his parents and dealing with the finances for them. And so all the more, my sisters and I would step in, help my mom, give my dad a break. My dad had a hip replacement. I went out and stayed with them and telecommuted for a month with work and did things like that over the years. and made sure that mom was getting the latest therapies and just trying to help and support her whole situation. My dad retired when he was about 72, and he got very active, which he did all the right things. He became a volunteer, AARP. He got very active in his 10th Mountain Division veterans group. My dad was a veteran of World War II and of the Korean War, and he was in the 10th Mountain Division during World War II. So he was a mighty warrior. He earned a Bronze Star. They drove the Nazis out of Italy and ended the war in Italy, and then later in all of Europe a few days later. So my dad was really something, and he got very involved in those things. He exercised, he stayed active. But after about 10 years after he had retired, my grandparents had passed away at this point, and I had moved to Washington, D.C. from Ohio. We started to notice some things in my dad in terms of his cognitive abilities. And sure enough, he developed Alzheimer's like grandmother did. And he caught it very early. So that was one of the best things, that his doctor, and he talked about any memory issues, and he had a doctor who was testing him regularly, doing, on a regular basis to see changes, and started him on a medication very early on. He was still driving and still managing life for he and mom, but he quit his volunteer activities. He kind of cut back on a lot of those things. And mom's health was getting more difficult. So it was getting harder for him to manage her health care. She was having more infections and falls and things going on. And so at one point, I decided to quit my job and become a consultant so that I could have more flexibility to come to Arizona and help them out. And I became a consultant so that I could work from anywhere. And I would come to Arizona for a week or two a month, and then go back to the Washington, D.C. area and back and forth. That lasted about 6 months, until I really was observing and seeing that they weren't eating very well when I wasn't there, because dad had become the cook when mom had her stroke, and they were eating at Burger King a lot. And we wanted dad to stop driving. He had glaucoma, so his vision was also compromised. And he also, later we realized, had visual processing problems because of the Alzheimer's. So he was having dents and dings on one side of the car, and I would ride along and see what his judgment was. And a lot of it was really vision oriented. So he didn't like that. As you can imagine, losing your wheels is your independence, and no one likes to be told that. But he said, then we're not going to be stuck in our home. We want to go to a senior community. And so I visited, 12 places around the Phoenix East Valley, and narrowed it down to 3. My sister and I visited these places, and then we brought mom and dad there so that they could make the final choice. They chose a place that was only 2 miles from their house, which was great because I moved into their house. And it was actually Brookdale Senior Living. It happened, by coincidence. And you can see down here in this picture, we set that apartment up. That was their home. And they were in independent living with some additional personal services to help with mom's showering and things like that. And it was home. And when they danced in the living room, I knew that it was going to be okay. It was going to be home, because they've been doing that my whole life. Now, over the next 3 years, we had a lot of fun because they participated in activities that was good socialization for them. Mom's health continued to deteriorate. She had many falls. She would get urinary tract infections. And the first sign we would have is that she would get weak and fall. And so we were constantly dealing with that. This young man on mom's lap joined our family around that time, and his name is Mr. Jackson. He was my dad's service dog, but he was really helped both my mom and my dad, because he was just that kind of guy. And he was my partner in caregiving, truly, through the whole experience. He took care of them. He kind of took care of me too. He was our comic relief and our joy, and kept my dad safe when he would go for walks, so that he would always get him back to the apartment. Both my parents had hearing impairment, and he would let them know when there was someone at the door. So Mr. Jackson was a very important part of our family. But some things happened over time. As I said, my mom had a catastrophic fall. She fractured her spine in 2 places and had to have surgery. walk again, and she made the choice to have the surgery. But at the hospital, she developed AFib and she got C. diff. And many of you, I'm sure, have experienced C. diff, and it's just a horrible bacterial infection, causes painful, horrible diarrhea, and she got it at the hospital because of it's very contagious. And she'd gotten it from somebody's instruments or something at the hospital, which really deteriorated her health. She ended up having a heart attack, congestive heart failure, pneumonia. She was in sepsis. She had a UTI, all of these things at once. It was 40 days and nights in the hospital. And I was with her most of that time, 24/7. My sister would come and give me breaks. And I worked full time at that point, but from her hospital room. And it was really quite an experience. And I really ended up with a lot of anxiety. By the end of that time, I had an anxiety attack one night, almost went to the ER, thought I was having a heart attack. Ended up, it was stress and anxiety and trauma. And so I have battled with PTSD from mainly the hospitalizations, but the whole journey. So my mom came home finally. She went to rehab for 3 months, which was at the skilled nursing facility right on the campus where they were living, which was great because Dad and Mr. Jackson could walk over every day multiple times. But this was a lot hard because I was there every day making sure that things were going the way they should be. She was getting what she should be. In the meantime, Dad's alone a lot more. And his dementia starts going downhill faster. And of course, it's a lot of stress having Mom so sick. And so I was starting to pay for some help for him. And then when Mom came back to the apartment with him, I was so worried she would fall. So I would spend every night there. And long story short, about 3 months after that Mom came back, Dad got sick, and he had a prostate inflammation problem, a urinary problem, but he aspirated and got pneumonia in the hospital because he had a flap in his esophagus. They talked me into giving him a feeding tube short term until he had surgery to prevent him from getting pneumonia again, which was really, really, really hard. But 2 months with the feeding tube, multiple times back in the hospital with it clogged. It was really quite the nightmare, and not much help, and 5 minutes of training in the hospital on how to deal with it. Obviously, I didn't know what I was doing. Dad finally, got back home, and we lost my niece to suicide during that time. And so it was a very, very tumultuous, down, flat on the ground time in our lives, in my family. And yet we still had Mom and Dad we had to keep taking care of and make sure that they got what they needed. So that kind of kept me going during that time. Now, I was spending more money to take care of Mom and Dad. When Dad was in the hospital, needed somebody with Mom, you get the idea. We're at the point of 24/7 care. So I ended up moving them back in the house with me. I had moved into their house. So here they are in their usual spots where they used to sit. They moved right back in. And it was actually less stressful for me because I could control everything, that they were eating, and I hired caregivers to help out. And in the end, it was more confusing for my dad because before they moved back in, he knew where everything was in his house, but when they moved back in, it kind of disoriented him. So that was hard, but we had a really great year with no hospitalizations. And then my mom got very sick very suddenly the day after my dad's 90th birthday. She had a urinary tract infection. We got her to the hospital and thought she was responding to the medications, and then she suddenly passed on. And it was devastating, and especially devastating for my dad because she was his North Star. She kept him going, and he was happy as long as she was around. He was oriented, in that sense. So my sisters and I just gathered around him. We grieved together. My sister from Ohio moved here to help take care of Daddy as his dementia started getting worse, of course, at that point. At the middle of all that, my oldest sister, Karen, was becoming very ill with Cushing disease, and she lived in Maryland, and I was her power of attorney. So her primary sense. She had a good support system where she lived. She had 2 younger daughters who were off at college and law school and not able to help her. So I would be flying back and forth, and she would be having a surgery and going, it was a lot going on at once. My wonderful mom passed away like a year after they moved in with me. My sister passed away a year after my mom did, also very suddenly. And then I ended up going and emptying her house out and taking care of her estate, which was really a nightmare. And taking care of Dad. Dad lived with me for a total of 6 years. He was just amazing. I kept him mobile the whole time. He was walking with 2 people at the end, but he was walking. And he felt safe and secure, dealt with a lot of the dementia things, if anybody has questions about that. And he passed away in his sleep at the age of 94, with my sisters and I, in the house around him. That's kind of my Cliff Notes version of my caregiving story. There are a lot more hospitalizations, a lot more ups and downs, and a lot of financial struggles that were part of this. I will share with you that I ended up in bankruptcy after all these years. It was, years of long distance caregiving, and then years of in-person and live-in caregiving, and trying to work and struggling with all of it. And I share that with people because I think caregiving is very financially draining, and people don't talk about money, and there's a shame associated with it. And it was a horrible experience for me. It was humiliating and demoralizing. But at the same time, it shouldn't be that hard. We should be able to take care of our loved ones and not end up in bankruptcy. So I want to share with you some of the things I learned as I was juggling my life. This is my boyfriend, Bill. He was a captain in the fire department in Baltimore County. So we had a very long distance relationship for many years. We're still together. We finally just moved into a house together in Virginia, trying to have friends, have time with friends, keep my identity of who I was during all this time. And my work, which keeps me very busy and active and traveling and speaking and doing interviews and writing, and caregiving. And, the truth is, at the heart of all was my caregiving. That was my top priority. And through this all, I had a lot of grief. There's a lot of grief involved with caregiving. And I know that all of you probably are experiencing that too, whether it's anticipatory grief and ambiguous grief, or you've lost a loved one and you're grieving. I'm just one of 48 million family caregivers. And you all watching are either caregivers, you've been caregivers, or you're going to be caregivers, because pretty much that's everyone. Or at least we're going to receive some care. So we all have these things in common. And I just want to share with you some of the things that I've learned. Now, I love this picture. This is Daddy loved his burgers. And so we had gone out for burgers, and I was fussing over him and trying to make it so he'd make sure he could get it. And should I cut it in half and all that stuff? And he just looked at me and he said, "Back off. I got a cheeseburger here." And he had such a great sense of humor. So we had a lot of fun when we were caregiving. And I think the joy is our greatest survival skill, and humor. So that's really my first tip is to nurture that, create joy whenever you have the opportunity. Here's my first tip. This was my to-do list. And I imagine if you look at your to-do list, it looks like this too. Everything was on that to-do list. And you know what I learned? I learned I can do anything, but I can't do everything. I have to build a team because I'm one person. And, we feel like we should be able to do everything. And I'm a person I'm like that type A personality where I'm like, well, I can do that. And I can, but I can't do everything. So that realization at some point during my caregiving journey was very freeing for me. It lifted a lot of stress because it made me realize I'm not weak if I can't do it all. There's not a deficit in me. My job is to build a team to make sure it all gets done. And I'll do a certain amount of it, but other people need to help too. And most people, this is my mom and dad were Robert and Patricia, and this was team Robert and Patricia. So if this is family, is your team, it's a pretty small team, isn't it? And many people feel that way, like it's just their family, or if they've got family members who aren't really helping, they're not stepping in and they're not doing their part. But I've realized that my team is way more than just family. It's all of these folks. And I've, highlighted some of the things, the respite care workers, the pharmacist was my best friend. I could call and ask any medication questions anytime. Friends and neighbors helped me get through so much of it and helped my parents. Their faith community, the mobile healthcare providers who I had come to the house, elder care mediators, yard services, home repair, helpful trying to keep the house going through that whole time. My mom's hairstylist, who had been doing her hair for 35 years or so, he was like part of the family, and he would go and get my mom and dad if I couldn't bring them for their appointment, because of course she had to have her hair done every Friday. That's just the generation she came from, and every Friday she had to get that hair done, and she got her manicure every 2 weeks, and my dad got a massage. And so, those were the things that kept them going. It was partly quality of life. It was motivation. It helped their health. And so they were very important things. So they were very critical people on my caregiving team. Organizations like Veterans Affairs, we had so many supports from the VA and could not have done it. And it took me a while to get those, but once we did, it really made a difference. The Area Agency on Aging, the social workers, the care managers, the case managers, the staff at facilities where your loved ones lived. When my parents lived at the senior community, the staff there were so helpful. They were 100% part of our team. Therapists, any paid caregivers you hire, organizations, meal delivery services. This is a big team, right? This is how we need to think of it. We have a safety net out there. The other piece of our team is who supports the caregiver. This was another lesson I had to learn, that these folks were just as important as the people who provided direct care to my parents or provided background care to make us keep it all going, because these people helped me do what I needed to do for my parents. So I had Debbie, who's in this picture here with me, and my mom and dad. She was a concierge, and she had this business where she would dog sit or check your house or run errands or do just about anything. And she became I call her my paid sister, and she's still a very close friend. And she would check on my parents when I was out of town or couldn't do so, check to make sure the paid caregivers were doing what they should be doing. She would run errands for me. She helped me put up holiday decorations. Now, this is the kind of thing, we're heading into the holidays now. That was really important to my mom. It's really important to me. It gives us joy, but I never had time to do it. And so I could pay Debbie for 2 hours of time, and the two of us together could get it done in half the time. And it made a really big difference for us. So think about what your friends, your neighbors, I had neighbors who would mow my lawn for me for my house back in the DC area, volunteers, friends, anybody who can help you, the caregiver, organize your mail, clean out the closet, do all the things, and bring meals, anything that can be helpful to you. Now, I want to give you another example. This is the valet guy. I don't remember his name. I'm sorry. But this is the Chandler Mall in Chandler, Arizona, where my parents lived. It gets very hot in Arizona in the summer. And so I couldn't just take them outside for walks and, get out and do things very easily. But I discovered they had this area where you could pull up in the shade, valet parkers. They would help get the wheelchair out of the car. They would help wrangle Daddy and Jackson out of the car while I, did other things. And then they'd park the car, and it cost $3. This guy was part of my team 100%, because he made it possible for me to then take them to the mall and walk around and get a piece of chocolate or eat a dinner or something like that. So for several years, this was really a critical part of our caregiving team. And you don't think of it that way, right? This is another example. Okay, so this is our garage before my parents moved back in with me, because when they moved out, it just went, crazy, and I just didn't deal with it. I didn't have time. And this was clearly not safe. It was terrible. And my boyfriend came and did that. So he's a definite keeper, don't you think? He put up shelves, he organized it all, made it so we could get the car in the garage. What a difference that made. He lived in Baltimore area. Was not here in Arizona all the time helping my parents, but he was supporting me and supporting them periodically. He gave me lots of moral support. And, when he was here, he would help out with them and do things like this that I just couldn't manage. So think broadly about your team, okay? And think about the roles they can play. Now, my number 2 tip, self-care is not optional. This is something that we often think is just optional. It's not to think about, right? We feel guilty if we take care of ourselves. It's like we put ourselves at the bottom of the list. But I had an experience that made me realize that my car can't run on empty, and neither can I. It made me realize that it's not selfish, it's not optional, it's just practical. It's just a practical thing we need to do. So the reason that I figured this out is I was driving to the gas station one day and my car was on fumes. And you know that feeling like, please let me make it. Please let me make it. Am I going to get there in time? And they literally, I pulled in and I got gas in the tank and I was so relieved, right? I was sure I was going to break down. And when I filled the car up with gas and I pulled out of the gas station, I said to myself, it's so interesting. The car runs better on a full tank of gas. The car actually runs differently. Well, duh, right? But that was my aha moment, that I was expecting myself to run on empty all the time and be just as efficient. And then I realized it put it in a very practical terms for me. Oh, the car is not going to run and be as efficient if it doesn't have a full tank of gas, and neither am I. It's that simple. So I started thinking about ways to fill my tank. What fills me up? What fills me up and keeps me going physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And I started thinking of quick things I could do. And I imagine that fuel gauge, and I imagine that fuel gauge then going towards full, because as caregivers, we don't have time to go get a complete fill up. That would be like a month vacation, right? But we can do it a bit at a time. Mostly we do these quick things. Just the thing about being able to connect with people. Movement it kind of fills you up. I used to do jumping jacks while I was waiting for my parents, help us get centered. Also, connecting with other people can be a great way to kind of fill ourselves up some. So it might be you call a friend, you get a hug. I used to say Mr. Jackson. Singing was a big part of our family. I have a degree in music therapy, and so singing was a big part of our lives, especially with Dad, because it was so wonderful with his dementia. All day long we would just burst into song if we needed a little energy. Maybe just making a cup of tea. We tried to keep fresh flowers, and always made my mom happy, and I realized it helped me too. And then you need premium fill-ups. So now and then we need something more. You're watching this webinar today. That's a premium fill-up. Something that helps you relax, maybe watching a movie. You can do these things with your loved ones too that help restore you a bit. Maybe a learning experience, taking a class. I did Pilates once a week. That was kind of my die-hard thing that I tried never to miss. Some people want to golf once a month, or hike, or just be outside with nature can be very fulfilling. I tried to get massages now and then. I know a lot of caregivers that do that. Joining a support group for caregivers can be a big premium fill up. You know what fills you up, and it's different for everybody. Routine maintenance has got to be a part of the plan, because just like your car, we need routine maintenance on a regular basis. And that can be, the things that you do ongoing. Sleep is number one, okay? Because we can't cope when we're exhausted. Exercise, eating healthy, going to your doctor's appointments, maybe getting counseling or a life coach. I got acupuncture on a regular basis. I got started my dad getting acupuncture, which helped him cognitively. And do things that maintain who you are. And then we have to have tune-ups. And so this is a break from caregiving. So some of these things you can do with your loved ones, but we need those times when we're not taking care of anyone. This is the hardest thing to do. It truly is. And it may be a couple hours, and it may be a weekend, and it may be that, once a year I tried to get a vacation with my boyfriend, and my best friend would treat me to a week. She had a timeshare at a beach, and so we would get away. And so those 2 times a year were huge for me. Didn't always make it every year, but tried to do that, because we need to have a break so that we can come back and be better caregivers. My third tip is to monitor your mindset. Your thoughts build your life. And I think that is a really good quote, because they do. I've been in this field for about 40 years, and I have seen many caregivers and interacted with them, whether they're caring for older adults, their spouse, their siblings, their parents, caring for grandchildren, all kinds of walks of life. And I see people with very similar situations who come through them differently. And I observe what's the difference. And the attitude is really what makes the biggest difference. Caregivers who come to me and are so angry and so resentful and so burnt out don't come through the experience as well. And that makes sense to us. But when we're in it, we can't see that. It's so hard to step out of that mindset. So I ask you to just be aware of your mindset. Sometimes it's good to just think about, okay, where am I coming from right now? You know, in this picture, Daddy was exhausted. I was exhausted. He always wore that little red cap at night when he slept. Daddy always wore a cap. You'll always see a picture of him with a cap on. And he wanted to keep it on while he slept. So we got him this little red knit cap to sleep in. There were times when he was just tired. He would just lean on me. You know, he was just exhausted. A lot of times I was coming from fatigue too. I was exhausted, and that would dictate my actions, my words, my emotions, everything. Fear is the other thing that we come from a lot when we're caregiving, because we are worried about our loved ones, and we're afraid of the finances, and we're afraid of our work issues that we're not keeping up with, and we're afraid about their health conditions. We're afraid of losing them. See how you can flip that to be coming from love and joy. I'll give you one example. My mom had another urinary tract infection, and the lab had messed up her lab tests. I was so angry because at that point was before we started getting any in-home mobile labs. And so I had to take her somewhere, and it was very hard for her. She had gotten really hard for her to get around, and I had to take time off work to do it. And I was just so angry. And I found myself yelling at the woman on the phone. And that's just not me. I never do that. And so she put me on hold, and I thought to myself, what is going on with me? I thought, I'm afraid my mom can get sick. And in fact, I had a right to be afraid, because that is how my mom died. But in that moment, it was not serving me. And I thought, how can I come from love? And I just regrouped myself. And then she got back on the phone. We worked it out. We worked towards a solution, because in the end, that's what was going to help. So just try to think about where you're coming from at any given time and how you can flip that. It doesn't have to be perfect. We all get angry. We all get resentful. Our tempers always get short. Don't worry about that. There's no perfect caregiver. But this is just a technique that you can use. Think about what you can do, not what you can't do, and what everyone else can and can't do. I can control my attitude. I can't control everything. I can be a strong advocate for my loved ones, but I can't fix everything. I so be Daddy to be the first one to get the cure for Alzheimer's. There were some things I didn't have control over, but I could be the best possible advocate for them. I can be there. I can commit to being there for the duration, but I can't stop aging. I can't cure all the diseases. I can get help. I can adjust my goals. I can't do everything. Remember, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. That's your mantra. I can accept and that people are going to do what they're going to do, and I can't change another person. I can release resentment, but I cannot change another human being. I can have peace of mind that I've done my best, but I can't please everyone. And there's always going to be people who are going to be critics. I can be resilient. I can get back up, but I am not superhuman. You know, I am not a perfect human being. I always felt it was helpful to remember why I was doing what I was doing. And this is my family. I'm the youngest there, who's always looking at my other sister who was making me laugh. I had a wonderful family. I did this out of love. Many people don't have great relationships with the people they're caring for, but they do it anyway. And they do it out of a sense of duty or responsibility. Whatever your motivation is, whatever the reason you're doing it, I ask you to think about the fact that you choose to care. People walk away. It happens. Again, worked in this field almost 40 years, and I've seen many older adults, especially, who have nobody looking out for them, and it's not because they don't have family. Embrace the fact that you choose to care. You realize you're not a victim, and you feel so much strong. I value what I do. I'm not a victim. I choose to be here. And look how strong my dad was at 90 years old. I can be that strong too. I can be that strong and of myself, and I can feel good about what I'm doing. I don't have to be perfect. I'm doing my best. That attitude, that mindset, being a victim is the worst possible thing in the whole world because we will never feel good. So let's step out of victim. And if you find yourself there, don't beat yourself up. We all get there sometimes. Step out of it and say, okay, I'm going to choose to do this and this, and I value what I do. I found that I had to flip my idea of what success was because I was feeling like a failure. Every time something happened, my mom fell or the medication wasn't right, or I forgot to pick something up or whatever. And I realized that wasn't helping them. It wasn't helping me and it wasn't helping them. And I thought, what's the opposite of failure? It's success. I clearly remember sitting at one day and thinking, oh, I got to do something about this attitude. This feeling is not helping. And I realized that it's being there. The one thing I knew I could commit to was to be there with my parents through this journey, be present with them, be alongside them through it. I couldn't fix it all and I couldn't do everything perfectly, but I was not going to give up on them and I was not going to abandon them, and I was going to do my best. And I think that again helped me go through this whole experience and feel that afterwards, like I had done my best. The things come along and they're going to knock you down. You heard a little bit about my story and all the things that happened that just had me flat on the ground, but I got back up. And, eventually we learned to ride the waves. If the dogs can do it, we can do it too. And I love this picture because I just think, if those dogs can do that, I can get back up and I can learn to ride those waves. Now, I want to let you know that the majority of people who have a caregiving experience come through it feeling that it's been overall a positive experience. So think about what you're going to look back on and feel good about and do more of that. I think that's the thing where, I look back and I see so many things I wish I'd done differently, but overall, I feel good about it. And I think that's how we all want to feel. That's how we all want to come through this experience. Now, I want to give you a little bit of advice from my daddy before I finish.
Keep cool, but don't freeze.
All right, Dad.
Okay?
Yep.
And enjoy it. Do it when you're trying to work or do it, fine. But enjoy it and do it. That's it. Don't fight it at all.
You've always.
You give it your best shot. Lots of people do. And lots of people don't. You hang in there.
And what other thing?
And we, as a group, as far as I'm concerned, we are groups of good, period. Whether it works out a little bit or not. The way it works out, the way it works out, the way it is.
Yep.
And do it your best shot. Okay?
Okay. You always told me don't fight the problem.
Okay, everybody agrees?
Everybody agrees.
All right. And here's to it to everyone.
And here's to all of you. Thank you so much for what you're doing for your loved ones. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. And please feel free to reach out with me. You can find me in all the places that Christian is sharing. And let's take some questions if you guys have any questions or things that you want to share.
Oh, amazing, Amy. This has been absolutely enlightening and encouraging, and your resilience and attitude is just inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm sure so many of us here can relate to that. Yes, we're going to get to questions in just a moment. As we get into it, there is one thing that I want to ask you about, Amy. I've heard that you are a moderator on the AARP Family Caregivers Discussion Group on Facebook. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What kind of conversations are happening within that group, and how can it be a resource to us here today?
Right. It's a fantastic group on Facebook. You have to have a Facebook profile, but you don't have to be very active on Facebook to join the group. And it's just for family caregivers. It's 15,000 people. I think it's 15,500 right now, but I'm in there every day. People post their questions, their problems, they vent. This is a place where you can say, I can't do this anymore. Or I just lost my temper and yelled at somebody. Or it's a place where you can say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Here's a triumph I had today. You know, I got my mom to eat her whole supper. Or, you know, I just figured out a way to make this happen. You know, people get it, you know, in this group. And we do a lot of group problem solving. You talk about the hive mind, like all the bees together working to help somebody solve a problem. And I share a lot of tips in the group. I do Facebook Lives in the group and share information and have, you know, guests. It's a wonderful supportive environment. That's been really important to me, that we keep it very positive. It's a private group so that we try to keep all the scammers out and no advertising is allowed. We do allow researchers to post in the group. But otherwise, you know, I just encourage you to find it. It's just called the AARP Family Caregivers Discussion Group on Facebook, and you can find it there. And, you know, some of the things that come up a lot are the basics: incontinence, how to deal with it. What are the best supplies? What do you do with that? Getting, you know, nutrition and eating things. A lot of folks talk about family issues and family members who aren't helping the way they want, or conflict among the family. We talk about those things. We talk about how to get supportive services and respite care, and what are the legal things you need to have in place, and how do we take care of ourselves as caregivers.
That's amazing. Thank you. First question. This comes from Bruce, who says, my mom moved into a Brookdale a week ago and is struggling to get comfortable and adjust. How long might this process take to kick in and for my mom to be happy in the new life that she has now? And I think that applies to just about any senior living situation.
Absolutely. Any kind of a change really is the thing, whether your loved one is moving in with you or moving into a different housing setting. Change is hard, and especially if you're an older adult who's been in one place for years and years and years. I mean, when you think about it, change is hard no matter how old you are. So try to keep that in mind. It's not just because someone's older that they struggle with these changes. And I think, you know, one of the things you can do is you do have to be patient. It takes some time. The more that a person can make it home, you saw the picture of my parents' apartment and how, you know, their furniture, I made it like their home. To make it home like that, I think is really important, to have familiar things around them. So if they're moving in your house, bring their recliner that's so comfortable, even if you don't like the way it looks. If they, you know, have their pictures around, or any belongings that are especially important to them. Keeping busy is important, but you don't want to overdo the keeping busy. So keep making sure that they have stimulating things to do. Socialization can be helpful, but some people are more introverted. So for some of them, that's not the main thing. Many of them, that's what they like. I have a friend whose mom moved into an assisted living community, and at first she just stayed in her apartment all the time, and she wasn't very happy. And my friend just kept encouraging her, Mom, get the activities calendar. Say, hey, Mom, they're having you know, bingo right now or whatever. Why don't you go down? And she just kept encouraging her until she started going. She started going down for meals and things, and just meeting a few people. So gradually over time, you know, be patient with it. It may take longer than you think. I think, you know, be empathetic and listen to her. Having empathy is such a key part of this, because if you know, when you think about it, again, this is hard. This is big change. And it may seem to you like, well, duh, this is the best place for you. But for her, it's different. So let her know that you understand, that you care, stay in touch. I find, you know, that more contact with loved ones is helpful with transition. Some places will want you to leave and not come back for a week or 2 weeks. And I don't really subscribe to that theory. That would have been really hard on my parents. So, you know, you've got to know the person that you're caring for and do what's best for them.
That's great. We have another question here. Would you talk about any legal documents or permissions a family member might need to handle while caregiving, whether that's healthcare, financial, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the earlier you get these things in place, the better. I was fortunate that my parents had worked with an estate planning attorney, and they had everything in place. My parents had a living trust. With your estate planning, you can have a will, you can have a living trust. There are various options. And it's really good to work with an attorney on those to make sure what's best for your individual situation. But they, at the same time, did their advanced directives. And when you hear the term advanced directives, that is referring to things that if you are unable to make healthcare decisions for yourself, that someone else can. And that would include a power of attorney for healthcare. And that's separate from a power of attorney for finances and property. The healthcare power of attorney can make decisions for you if need be. Also, it would include a living will in terms of what kind of measures do you want people to go through if at the end of your life. And then it might include a do not resuscitate order. My parents had that at the end of their life. And I'll give you a little tip. My mom had that. When my mom died in the hospital, they revived her because they whisked her off to ICU and I didn't ask me. And I was like so shocked. I didn't know what was going on. And she had a DNR. We had filed at that hospital many, before, but that particular admission, for whatever reason, they didn't ask about it. I don't even remember what the situation was, but I should have had a copy of that in her hospital room. So if you have some of these advanced directives, carry them with you. Be sure to have it on your phone or have a printed out version in a folder that you take wherever you go. Some people post it on the refrigerator. The advanced directives can also include a document. There's a really neat document called the 5 Wishes. If you just Google 5 Wishes, I think it's 5wishes.org. And it includes these powers of attorney and all of these things, but also some more nuanced things like, what do I want? Do I want music playing at the end of my life? Do I want, somebody to massage my hands with lavender cream? What are the things, really specific things that you want? So your advanced directives. Then you need your power of attorney for finances. And there are different types of powers of attorney, durable powers of attorney, springing powers of attorney in terms of when they kick in. But you can talk with an attorney about what's the best situation, what do you want? What do you need? And it's important to have these things in place because you never know when someone might need help. I was my parents' power of attorney and I was my sister's power of attorney. And with my parents, I used it quite a bit while they were still living because they weren't able to do these things. For my sister, I only had to use it once when she went into a diabetic coma after a surgery and could not make decisions for herself. But afterwards, when a person dies, those powers of attorney are void and no, they do not apply. So that's why the estate planning is so important, because then you need someone who can take over the legal and financial matters after someone passes away. So I urge you to, you can get free copies of all the advanced directives at the 5 Wishes, or AARP also has AARP.org/ I think it's advanced directives, where you can download for every state, and they are different in every state. Some of them require a notarized signature. Some of them just require a witness. So do it for your state. There's no reason not to get those done quickly because they're easy. Your other financial power of attorney, I think it's a really good idea to work with an attorney if you can.
Amazing information. Thank you. We have quite a number of questions coming in that are fairly similar to each other. So I'm going to kind of group them all together here. But okay. It really comes down to how do you approach the conversation and help convince your loved one that it may be time for an assisted living situation or maybe a transition if they're already in a senior community into that next level of care. So without taking total control, how can I best guide my parents into a wise choice? Or I have an elder parent who's really struggling at home, and how can I help her transition into that next phase where it's home health care or a transition to a senior living community?
So this is a really common question, and obviously it's a common challenge. If you are trying to work with a loved one, whatever situation their current living situation and care situation is, but you want them to change it, I always say talk early and often. If you're not in this situation right now, start talking about it now, because it's easier to talk about something that's going to happen in the future. Someday when I stop driving, or someday when I can't live in this house, or whatever the situation is. So those of you who are not in a crisis around this, start talking about it. If you're already in that situation, that's okay. Start talking about it now. A few key tips that I like to share. One is do your homework before you have the conversation. Know what the options are. Just coming to someone and saying, Dad, you shouldn't drive anymore, or mom, I don't think you can live alone in this house anymore. We got to make a change. That's not helpful to them. If you come and say, I am concerned about your driving, and here are some ways that you will get around and get where you need to go when you need to go there. Or here's an option. I looked into having a home health, hiring a caregiver. Here are the different ways I can hire a caregiver. Here's how much it's going to cost. I've looked at the budget. Here's what we can afford. Really have some concreteness to it. It's often helpful to start the conversation indirectly, like, I watched this webinar, or I read an article, or my friend's mother is doing this and she loves it, or, and have someone they can talk to. We just went through this with one of my extended family members. We had to gradually introduce more and more care, rather than, I want somebody with you 24 hours. We started out with somebody a few hours in the morning, and just said, we're concerned about you being alone. This person can come help and do certain things. Most people are aware that there are things that are getting harder for them. So if you start with that, sometimes that helps. I'm going to get some housekeeping for you, or we're going to get, this or that, and give it as a gift, and just see that they kind of might like it, or we're going to get meals delivered for you. And then make sure when you have these conversations that you bring the right people to the table. That it might be that your mom really listens to your brother, or that this is a conversation best had with their financial advisor, or their lawyer, or the doctor. When we wanted dad to stop driving, we had an appointment and the doctor brought it up. So think about those things. When is the best time to have the conversation? Not when they're tired, not at a big holiday family gathering when everybody's happy. This is going to be a series of conversations. Bringing it in, and use your communication skills. I statements. Mom, I'm concerned about, or I care about, or not, you shouldn't be doing this. That nobody's going to respond well to that. And make sure that you listen to them. Again, have empathy and respect. You're not trying to take over their lives. I always say the main goal is for our loved ones to remain as independent as possible for as long as possible. That's everyone's goal. That behooves them and us as their caregivers. So make sure they know that. You got the same goal. You're not trying to limit her. You're trying to enable her to remain as independent as possible, so that she can do as much as she can with a little bit of support. And try to couch it as this is a normal and expected kind of thing. That's hard for people to gauge, because everybody just is in denial and hopes that they'll never need any assistance. So I hope those are some helpful tips. You can use anything to kind of just think little bits at a time, gradually talk about the conversation.
That's incredibly helpful. Thank you, Amy. We have a few different financial based questions.
Okay.
And I think one that's, your story in leaning into the idea of being transparent about, facing bankruptcy was really compelling. So, a few questions here for what are options for parents who don't have any money for a senior living situation, or to help with the caregiving situation, or how could we look at situations like bankruptcy and avoid it? Is there anything that you personally would have done differently, or that you would give as advice to others who are going through that?
The main thing I would have done was get a financial advisor for me. My parents had a financial advisor, a guy who did their taxes and had done all their stuff. And, unfortunately, my dad had made a few bad decisions financially, which was because of the Alzheimer's, which we didn't realize, and so they had gone through all their savings and investments. But they did do some planning. They had long-term care insurance. And then I eventually got veterans aid and attendance benefits for my dad, which was a cash benefit. That was really helpful. For me, I kept thinking I should be able to figure this out. I should be able to do this. I'll catch up later. I'll make payments later. And I just started, I was paying for things on credit cards, and that was my biggest problem. And then when you get to a certain point, they raise the interest rate to 23, 29%. It's impossible. And so if I had someone who all through it was meeting with me regularly, looking at my finances, say, Amy, you can't do this. Let's try this. And that, I think that would have made a difference. I can't say that I didn't that I wish I hadn't gotten my parents this support or that support. Like I can't say that, but I think I could have, had a bigger picture view of it for a long time if I'd had that kind of support. Now, I do encourage you to maximize any benefits your loved ones might be eligible for. And that might be help from the Area Agency on Aging, where they have some free or sliding fee scale services. For example, going to an adult daycare center for the day might be less expensive than having one-on-one care at home. If they qualify for Medicaid, be sure and do what you can with that. And you can also do the do Medicaid planning with a certified Medicare planner, because you sometimes have to look ahead. They do a look back on how money was spent. So start talking about that now. The veterans, I saw somebody ask about the veterans aid and attendance benefits. The VA has various benefits for people of different eras of the war of service and different types of service. There's something called aid and attendance benefits that are cash benefits to help pay for care for veterans. They have to have served during wartime, and don't have to have and they don't have to be overseas. They just have to have been in active duty service during a wartime. There are other programs too, though, and they're more geared for more recent veterans. So reach out to the VA Caregiver Support Program. If you're caring for a veteran, even if they've never availed themselves of any veterans benefits, my dad hadn't, they can be very helpful, and also with home-based primary care and urinary incontinence supplies and medication and all those things. It's caregiver.va.gov. That's caregiver.va.gov. And that goes to the VA Caregiver Support Program. They have a toll-free number you can call, ask about what's available. Other financial supports, again, long-term care insurance. That it's a terrible situation in this country that people who are the poorest poor can actually get better care and people who are richest rich who can afford to pay for everything. And then the people in the middle are really stuck because my parents did the best they could with their savings, and it still was not enough for someone who has dementia, and it goes on for years and years and years. So be sure and look at that. And I urge people to talk to their legislators and say, hey, I'm a caregiver. You need to do things that support us. We need tax breaks. We need tax credits. We need things that will help us do this incredibly important job. $600 billion is the value of the care that family caregivers provide. It's unbelievable. And yet we aren't given the little bit of support that we need in order to do it.
Oh, amazing information. Thank you so much, Amy. Unfortunately, we are at the top of the hour, so that is it on time. Amy, I want to sincerely thank you for joining us today. Thank you for this premium fill up of our caregiving tanks. And thank you for sharing your personal journey and giving so many practical tips for us caregivers. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. If you'd like to learn more from Amy Goyer, you can follow her on Facebook, X, Instagram, or connect on her website, amygoyer.com. You can also pick up a copy of her book, Juggling Life, Work, and Caregiving, on Amazon.
I was just going to throw in, if you have questions that didn't get answered, you can join the Facebook group, the AARP Family Caregivers Discussion Group, and you can post your questions there, or you can direct message me on Facebook as well.
Lovely. Thank you. Please join us on January 25th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Central Time for our next webinar, Walking for Health and Balance with fitness expert Kathy Smith. You can sign up now at brookdale.com/in-the-know, and registration info will be emailed to you. We have a bunch of different webinars on our website, brookdale.com/in-the-know. Each of our webinars features a different subject. You can watch them at your convenience. We do hope that you found this presentation to be helpful, and we hope to see you again soon. Until next time, we hope that you and those you care for stay safe, happy, and well. Thank you.